Organizational update. Okay, we don't have a meeting in November and December because we know it'll conflict with holidays, but we also know everybody's busy with all kinds of extra performances and events, and that includes DACAC. We are bringing back the holiday reception for the mayor, city council, cultural affairs commissioners, and county commissioners. That will be back at the 6th Floor Museum on December 11th from 5 to 7:30. It's always a fun event, but it's our chance to thank our elected officials and our appointed officials for all that they do for us. And it's a fun event, but I do ask that our members help us out by not only coming, but bringing some libations of this. So that would be bringing 1 or more bottles of wine, red, white, or champagne, or sparkling. Doesn't have to be real champagne, can be sparkling. Either to the event, or you can drop them off with me at any time between now and then. And we'll be getting some official information out about this, but just trying to get that on everybody's radar. It's a Monday. So we know that's good for the theater people, and we know that it's not a city council meeting day. So for a lot of reasons, that's a good day. It also worked well for the 6th Floor Museum, and we want to thank them again for hosting us, letting us come back. So anyway, I will need some volunteers there to help us, probably at least an hour and a half before. We'll need someone to help with check-in, and then we need some people to help us, kind of clean everything up and leave things in good condition. So I will follow up with all of you on that, but just wanted it on your radar. So moving on, I think the first thing we wanted to do was get a real quick update on the Dallas Bond Program, which just goes up and down and up and down. So Chris Heinbaugh has the latest and greatest. There was another meeting apparently yesterday or today that no one knew about. And so Chris, if you could give us the latest info on where things stand with the bond program, we'd all like to hear that. Sure.
So Joanna said up and down again, and we're down again. So what happened was, this has been in the hands of the bond task force and a subset of that, which are subcommittees. And there are different subcommittees for like streets, economic development, critical facilities, which include police stations, fire stations, cultural venues, libraries and stuff, and parks. Then there's one for parks. And then, so each of those subcommittees has been working and returned with kind of what they felt needed to be in the bond program. The challenge was that this was a $1.1 billion bond program, and they came back with $1.8 billion in recommendations. So last night, the bond task force went through those recommendations and did some serious slashing in a lot of places. One of the places that did not get slashed much was parks, but everything else took some big hits. Housing, all the critical facilities. There was a lot of stuff there that got cut, and now it's gone back to the subcommittees. So fortunately, I was given a heads up and was able to jump on the subcommittee meeting this morning that was called literally last night. So a lot of people weren't even aware of it. A lot of the department heads weren't even aware of it, but they were sitting there really trying to make the tough choices. And so we had gotten up to 5.3 million in the bond program. And our goal, of course, was 6%. So that's at least 60 million, but we'd like to get to obviously 6% of the whole bond, which is 6.6 million, a billion, million, 60.6 million. Thank you. So anyway, so today we got cut from 53 down to 48. Okay, so that's not good. Because we had already gone through a really deep vetting process to kind of screen out stuff. So it was very frustrating that the other groups had not, and they were not, we felt like we were being penalized for that. On top of it, the city has has decided to add some work that the city needs to get done at the Meyerson, add that into the bond program. So that's another 5 million. So that's kind of where we're at. So we're kind of 10 million down. So we are going to work next week to try the subcommittee is meeting next week, and then it'll go to the task force. So we are trying to get cultural facilities back up. And with cultural facilities within the critical facilities, we're trying to get that back up. And then we're all going to have to go to work on the council. And because this will pass to the council and they're ultimately going to make the big decisions on this. But our goal is to try and come out of this task force process as close to our 6% as possible, and then hope that our council members will help put us over the top. But it's going to be tough, and we're just going to need everybody's help. And part of that will be if they have more speakers at the task force, then we'll do that. But if not, we may start asking people to sign up for the speakers at the beginning of council meetings, so that we have a continual stream of council stuff going. But then we'll also need you guys we'll need to email, and we'll need to get our patrons to email. I know we sometimes engage our board, but we are really going to have to go to the mat over this. We're not going to have any more bond money until 2029, and that probably will not be a significant year for arts. So we have to make the most out of this bond program that we can. So, just know we're going to need all hands on deck here soon. So I think that's about it. I'll answer any questions if anybody's got any.
My question is, will the final decision be made?
Well, the council, I think this will go back, the task force, the schedule right now is that the task force will finish up its work in November and pass it over to the council, and that the council will probably take it up. My guess is probably December is when they'll take it up. We have one big question hanging out there, with two, but really one. One is they might make the bond a little bit bigger. Okay. I'm not sure they're going to do that, and I haven't sensed there's a real strong appetite to do that. Second is the timing of the election. The council, all this process has been done with the eye towards a May election. The challenge is the police and fire pension fund. The city has that. We thought that was solved 5, 6, 7 years ago. Well, it wasn't. It was a Band-Aid, and that problem is back, and it's got to be dealt with. And so the police and fire pension folks are pushing for this council to consider taking out pension bonds, which could impact the capacity of the borrowing capacity for the city. There's the city manager does not want to do that because he thinks right now it's not a good way to deal with the problem, especially with interest rates as high. But what they're trying to do is push that out to November to give the city time to figure that out. City manager thinks they can figure it out in December or January and still have the election in May. So the question as to when the election will be is in doubt, but I would prefer, that's another 6 months of buildings falling apart. So, and it's also another 6 months of people tinkering in the bond program. So we'd like to kind of get it set and get that out of the way, but and hopefully they won't decide we've got to shrink this bond program to take care of the pension bonds. So anyway, there's a lot of pieces in play. And like I said, I was just very fortunate that someone told me about the meeting this morning. So I was able to jump on, even though they weren't taking comments. The fact that they had at least one of us hovering in the background and they could see that we were on this virtually on this meeting. I think that helped. And we were able to kind of this morning rally some of the subcommittee members who were very helpful today. Bruce Richardson, some of you may know Bruce, really strong advocate. That's Paul Ridley's member, Aurelie Esteban. And so there were a number on there, but also a lot are out traveling and we're not able to be on the meeting today. So hopefully we'll have even more voices next week and we can get those numbers back up. But but the Meyerson certainly adds a big chunk in there that we're going to have to, city's going to have to figure out. So.
And Chris, do you have a date and time for the next task force meeting that we can at least put a placeholder on our calendar in case we have to be there?
Let me go in and find out. I want to think it's a Saturday.
Oh,
I know. I think Ann Margolin told me it was a Saturday. So I'll find out, and Joanna, we'll send that all out to everybody.
We'll send something out.
It would be good because I know, the parks will show up. So that's
Right.
when I think it would be important to show up to, because
And
they'll move that around there because the numbers were set last night. They can't move the numbers, but they can still move the numbers around in that critical facilities bucket. And there are a bunch of things in there that have not gone through the scrubbing that cultural facilities did. And we're kind of pushing, that subcommittee to really demand that they do that because, we've done it. So we shouldn't be taking more haircuts. So.
Chris, I know that this goes back a few years, but I think right pre-pandemic, there was a lot of discussion with regard to the pension fund problem for the police and fire. It's not just unique to Dallas, it's every major and medium-sized city in Texas. And there was discussion that the state legislature was considering some sort of statewide fix that would have rectified this for everybody. Do you remember anything about that, or know if there's been any movement on that?
There's been discussion on it. There's not movement. And I think it will end up coming back up again, but it's obviously a touchy topic because, politicians don't like getting crosswise with police and fire folks and look like somehow they're opposing them. And that's not the case. I think the city is making a strong effort here to help that fund. And if you recall, the reason the fund was in trouble was because of the bad investments of the police and pension fire or the board, police and fire pension board. And the city committed to stepping up to fixing it to stop everybody from quitting. And and I think they're committed to continuing to do that. I just don't know what it is, but other cities are facing the same challenges. And I don't know. I don't see a great desire to change the benefits. So I'm not sure how they're going to fix it. But anyway, yes, Joanna, that is, but I don't see any movement on that yet. Okay.
And we know that the legislature has not been real friendly to cities lately. So
exactly. That's the other piece. And that was the case last time. Mayor Rawlings went down and really took a beating down there because it was a lot of pile on. And so it's not a great position.
Maybe now that the mayor has joined that team, they'll be more receptive.
No comment.
So just an observation.
All right. We'll get the date for the next meeting so we can get it on everybody's calendar. And there is like I said, a task force meeting next week. So if I get the link, I'll let you know. When you sign on, make sure you put your organization name on so they see that you're an arts organization. I think that's important because just putting your name on, they don't always know. It's a WebEx thing, so they don't always know who it is. But if you put your organization up there with your name, that helps.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chris, for that update.
Sure.
And you're going to let us know when that meeting is next week, as well as the other meetings, or?
Yes, and I would also say this, if you're going to attend, and we'll send something out, but if you're going to attend, let me know that you're on or you are going to be on, because I could get one of those subcommittee members to kind of note that for the record which would let all the others know that you've got quite a few people from the arts on this call.
Okay.
The only other thing we were going to go over today was the Economic Impact Survey from Americans for the Arts for the City of Dallas has finally been released. You all remember that we were busy collecting surveys at all of our events starting in May of 2022 through July of 2023. This was this is supposed to be done every 5 years. It got delayed by the pandemic. So we're very happy to finally have these. These are the numbers that we use when we're going in to talk to the city council and other elected officials about why they need to continue the support for the arts, both through their general fund budget, hot tax, and also things like the bond program. So it's a 60-page survey. We will post it on the DACAC website. I urge everyone to take a look at it, but I have pulled out some of the salient information for us to review. So, I put a little note on this one. Now, the method for collecting this data this time was revised heavily. So we really can't do a direct comparison to the 2015 Economic Impact Survey, which was, there was a lot less data collected for that. It was many fewer categories. So we really can't make a direct comparison, but I wanted to compare actually the final total economic impact numbers, even though they're not adjusted for inflation, just to show you that in terms of dollars, we are near where we were in 2015, pre-pandemic, and we know the pandemic hit us all hard. And but I think this is encouraging that we've seen this kind of recovery, even though with inflation and other factors, it's not really as good as it looks. Also, 13,953 jobs supported, 168,565,000 so on of tax revenue. That's local, state, and federal. That's a lot of economic impact, and that's why this survey was so important, for us to be able to bring these numbers to our elected officials and other leaders, not just elected officials, so they can see the value that the arts are not just window dressing. We have a direct benefit to the economy. We're an important part of the economic machine. So go to the next page. One of the things this survey tried to look at this time, which was different from previous, was to ask the participants who are attending our events to actually answer some other questions beyond just how much they spent and so on. And I think this is really interesting that we had such a high percentage of respondents who basically said, the venue or facility is an important pillar for me within my community. There would be a great sense of loss if this were no longer available. It inspires a sense of pride, ensures this activity or venue is preserved for future generations. And there were some other things as well, but this is sort of measuring I think not just the economic impact, but the quality of life impact that we have. And these are really strong numbers. So I'm glad that they decided to expand and include this information, because I think when we're based on who we're telling our story to, this is important information to be able to provide to. It shows very, very strong support within the community for arts and culture. So go to the next page. And Lily and Chris, if you have observations, I know you've both done a deep dive in this too, so please add your thoughts. On this page, we're looking at some of the information. This was the first time they actually asked for BIPOC or ALANA organizations to provide data separately, so that there could be a comparison, and so we could see how much value there is, what great value there is in our BIPOC organizations. So this particular graph shows how we compare here locally with our BIPOC organizations to the sample nationals. And you can see we're really, really close. And again, very high numbers on this. So go to the next slide. This helps show the average spending by arts and culture attendees, and also the impact for cultural tourism, which is another important element. And that helps support the hot tax revenue directly. And it also shows that you know, we're drawing support not just from our local community, but from others, surrounding communities and beyond. So we had great attendance overall. That was with local and non-local, almost 7 million attendees to the events. We had a little over a third of that were travel related or cultural tourists. The average dollars spent, you can see that our cultural tourism dollars were a bit higher. And then the total event related spending was 330 million. So that's
the nice thing on that too, our spending per attendee is higher than the average across the country. And a lot of that, not surprisingly, we like to drink and eat because those numbers are up much over the rest. One number in the study, when you look at it, that I think is, I don't want to say suspect, but I think it does not accurately reflect. There's a number in there on the amount that people spend on hotels, and it's kind of low. But when they look at attendees, they are looking at attendees that have come from outside Dallas County. So we obviously have a lot of people from Tarrant County, from Collin, from Denton, from Rockwall, you know, there's a bunch of people there. So it skews those numbers because those people, you know, we get a lot of our out of town numbers from there, which is great for Dallas, for restaurants, everything. We're pulling in people from outside just Dallas County, but that skews that hotel number. So it makes it look like people don't spend much in hotels when the reality is the people further beyond are spending a lot more in hotels. So I think that's something we want to try to figure out with them in the next study. How can we refine that a little bit more? Because that does help us with our hotel people and Visit Dallas people and stuff like that. Because I think a low number could be read that we just don't have many cultural tourists that aren't staying at hotels. And that's not the case. I think those numbers are a little skewed, but a lot of other stuff in here is really promising, and especially the stuff that, and I'm already working to use this, that people value, that attendees valued what they saw here and felt it was an important part of their community, that the venues were an important part of the community and would be deeply missed if they weren't there. So I think that's good messaging for the bond program.
And Lily, did you have a comment you wanted to make? I saw something come up in the chat.
Yes, I just wanted to let you all know that Ben Davidson with Americans for the Arts contacted me this week. They are very late in putting up the participating cities and organizations that participated in AEP 6. And what's interesting about that, because I remember last time in 2015, and that data didn't come out until 2017, it's important that we could compare ourselves to like cities and see what that looks like. And that helps our local, regional, and state government be able to see the comparison of Texas to the arts in Texas and culture in Texas compared to other cities. And we came out really well in 2017. And I suspect with these results that we are going to do it again.
Lily, did he give you an idea when those would be out? Because we were hoping on them. I'd love to have them for a press release, but I don't think
I know.
Wait.
I don't think you're going to be able to wait. He said, I mean, he underscored very behind on that. And they said, if anybody asks, they do give the information based on, because last time I think Philadelphia, you know, it was helpful to know what, and by the way, everyone, all 50 states and Puerto Rico were represented in terms of this study, organizations from all states. So that's a good thing. I'm just anxious to compare, but I'll let you know, Chris, as soon as I do.
Great. we are, just so everyone knows, we're coordinating North Texas Business Council, has always been a partner in this. And they are doing a press release looking at all of North Texas as a region. So that includes Fort Worth and Irving and Frisco and, so they're looking at that as a region, and we are coordinating a press release that will come from Office of Arts and Culture and Arts District, and so that we'll coordinate, but we don't want our really good numbers to kind of get lost in the big numbers. So we've got our own press release to go out. That'll go out and accompany theirs, but we just don't want our good numbers to get lost.
Okay, thank you. Let's look at the next page. So this is something that compares those questions that were asked about, how people felt about the events or the venues, compares the BIPOC to the general. And you can see there's almost no difference. It's pretty much exactly the same numbers. That would have been what I would have expected, but it's nice to see it, really there in black and white. And I'm glad they're measuring those things, because I think that just strengthens the case when we're talking, depending upon who we're talking to. But I think that's an important point to make when we're talking particularly to the council. So next page. And then this was interesting. It's the demographic information, and it compares our local attendees to the non-local attendees. And not surprisingly, travel party sizes were usually probably just couples. Age range, the bulk of them are baby boomers. Educational attainment, the bulk of the attendees are people who have college educations. And then annual household income tends to be on the higher end, and a fairly small percentage that are identifying with a disability. So next page. And this is the last page that we're going to go through. There's much more in the report, but I didn't want to go through the whole report because we'd be here all night. So this looked at ethnicity of the people that participated. And we know that we had just under 3,000, I think, participants or surveys for this time. That is a small sample. And so I'm not sure that we really accurately collected a complete overview of the demographics, but it does give you a sense of who is attending, what kind of events. Just more good information for people to have. And I know there was a lot of people who just don't answer that question. I think that's the other thing that sort of skews the numbers a little bit, because some people just don't answer that question. I know I saw on a lot of our surveys that people just left it blank. So anyway, Lily or Chris, do you have any other things that you want to add, or does anyone have?
Yeah, but I see Krista's got her hand up, so let's maybe hear from Krista.
Yes, I just want to make sure that we can get this report as just not a report, but a presentation by one of you or probably both of you in front of the commission in the coming months. I think this is going to be really helpful for obviously lots of reasons, but as we're talking to our council members and our communities about bond programming.
Yeah,
I'm sure we can do that.
Since OAC and Arts District were the official kind of sponsors of the program. They'll probably, I'll leave that to Lily and Martine to respond to, but yeah.
Okay, well, I'll make sure that tonight I send out an email to including y'all, Lily, you on it, and Martine, just saying we need to get this in front of the commission as soon as we can, get it on the agenda. That's okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
And realize that the one thing we do have a little bit easier in, we have the full 60-page, City of Dallas does, so does the Dallas Arts District, but we also have a 2-page summary. with all,
That's
with,
fantastic.
yeah,
Fantastic.
it's a little hard to read 60 pages.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
I will just throw in, you know, this was an interesting process. And I think it undervalues our economic impact. But I do think a lot of cities had the same problem, because when this was started, everyone was still rebooting from COVID. And so we were not fully up to speed. And it also didn't have our full attention. I mean, I don't know how much teeth pulling we had to do to get people to put these out and use them. I went to tons of shows and nobody was handing out the little cards that we created with the QR codes to take it. And I can only think what our results would be if everybody, and I think we're set to do this again in 2025. And when we do that, if we can all get on that, I think we would just blow it out of the water, because, you know, there's so much going on here, and this does not even begin to capture all the stuff that we have going on here. So just know we're going to be at it again in a few years, and really have an opportunity then, when we're kind of back to full steam, to be able to kind of push all that forward.
And what Chris and I noticed, and we plan to clean it up with Americans for the Arts.
Yes.
In their database, they've got a lot of duplication. So they almost double or triple the number of organizations that they thought should have participated in the City of Dallas one, and that's incorrect. I'll just give you an example because it's easier for the Arts District. They sent me data to just double check, and they sent me that I had 25 organizations. I said, Ben, we don't have 25 arts organizations in the Arts District. I said, we have 16. And he said, Lily, if you can send that to me again, we'll clean this up. It's not like we're going to compare it to 2015, but it's good to clean it up, because it looks horrible if it said 16 out of 25 organizations from the Arts District participated. We had all 16 participate. And so
they had us down for
difference.
they had us down
300.
for like 300 groups. And we're like, there's
Right.
not 300 arts groups here, but
Right.
there's like, they would have AT&T Performing Arts Center and Dallas Center of Performing Arts. Well, it's the same
Correct.
organization, and there's a whole bunch of that. We were able to clean it up on the Arts District end. That didn't get cleaned up on the city. So what it looks like we only had 20% participation.
Right.
When the reality is, we had a huge number of arts organizations participating in this, in terms of supplying their numbers and things like that. So that's another thing we're going to focus on getting cleaned up next time around, is to get all that, you know, the duplicate names and groups that have long since disappeared off that list.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. And please, you can go to the DACAC website to look at the whole report, and then we'll get that 2-page report out as well. So, and so the last thing on the agenda, we have a report from Texans for the Arts, a legislative update, and we have Anne Graham and Christopher Kiley here with us today. Welcome. We're so glad to have you. And I want to say this is, Anne is making her final report. Anne is retiring, and her wonderful successor, Chris Kiley, will be taking over. But Anne, we have just thought the world of you this whole time. You worked so hard, you and Chris both. We can't thank you enough for being the statewide chief advocate on behalf of all of us. Well done, you.
And you went out in a blaze of glory with this last legislative session.
Yeah.
You know, we got what we were asking for.
We did. Well, thank you so much. I really look forward to DACAC meetings, and of course, board members are very well represented, and I'm constantly talking about how DACAC is the role model in terms of regional and municipal arts advocacy organizations. You guys just, you do it all, and you are a role model. And if all of our cities had this kind of integration and support, we'd be even up there. So thank you so much. I do want to introduce Chris Kiley down he's on the bottom left there. I don't know where he is on your screen, but very excited. I wouldn't I wouldn't be happy leaving this organization at all if I didn't have Chris, knowing that Chris was going to become the new executive director. Chris has been part of the team, part of my team since for 7 years. Met him like maybe a month after I even started this job. So he's been part of the milieu for the entire time that I've been with Texans for the Arts, as has he, and we're all going to be in really good stead. And with all of your support regionally as well. So thanks for all your commendation. I really appreciate it. And I just love these conversations. And I love my job, but it's just time to move on and bring in this next generation. Couple things. One, I do know that I did find on the AEP6, I found the list of Texas cities but not again the dollar signs, and short of calling them all up and asking them for their 2-pager, which would actually be an interesting internship project. That might be an interesting thing. I also just wanted to clarify that we as the state advocacy organization don't go through the AEP process. We've talked about it before. I've talked with Americans for the Arts about it. Because we work in partnership with the Texas Cultural Trust and they do the State of the Arts report, otherwise referenced as SOTAR. If you've been to Arts Advocacy Day or the Summit and you've picked up one of the postcards on SOTAR, you'll see the numbers there. And though that math, that data is compiled by Travis James, who also does any of our hot research. And they publish that, and that's the data. It's all of the data comes from the comptroller's office. So it's all internal, and it's we do use AEP. We use those numbers. In fact, literally, Chris and I were just on a call this afternoon to somebody who just called up and said, hey, I need figures for a talk before Friday. What do I do? Right. So it's comparing apples to oranges when we do AEP and when we do the SOTAR. And then just to mix it up, we also have the BEA, which is the Bureau of Economic Analysis, which is the federal standard. So you can pick and choose which ones you need to tell which story. So we're glad that we have all three, but we do not invest in the AEP ourselves. Partly the state is so big and it would take so much orchestration and be prohibitively expensive, and the TCT is doing it at their expense, and we benefit. So long story. And it looks like Lily just put the link to the SOTAR in, and always keep that handy. And they have a postcard that you can use and download and use. So that's a quick little thing about the AEP. So I too look forward to seeing what the study results are. In terms of legislative session, and I also want to give a shout out to Martine. Martine emailed and said, requested that we provide her with any information on legislation at the federal or state level that the city of Dallas should be apprised of as potentially to endorse or at least be aware of, which I think is great. If only every city arts leader, contacted us and said, hey, what legislation should we be working on? So just to sort of as an update, because we're in the interim in the state, we don't have bills. We know that bill numbers, we know exactly that we need to pass. But we are planning. We had an advocacy committee last week. Chris Heinbaugh is chair of our advocacy committee. He was present. We'll be doing brainstorming on, what are some new ideas for new legislation that might benefit individual artists that we're not doing now, or in the nonprofit sector or the for-profit sector. We're meeting with Gary Gibbs on Monday, executive director of the TCA, Texas Commission on the Arts, to sort of find out where his head is and his commission thinking is in terms of what paving the way. We had a meeting last week or 2 weeks ago with Texas Hotel Lodging Association with Scott Josloff and Justin Bregel. When I say we, I mean Chris and myself. He's the companion in all of this. And Scott said an interesting thing was that after this last session, which was the 88th session, with such a major piece of legislation that we did pass, the Senate Bill 1420, the transparency reporting bill, that they like to look at the legislature, like hit them hard one year, lie low the next year, hit them hard the next year, lie low. So this 89th will undoubtedly have hotel occupancy tax bills on it, but nothing as major as what we just passed. We'll of course continue to monitor that and just make sure that it's hard to predict what's coming down the pipeline. There may be some interim charges as well around HOT. Chris, did you have a question? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, I was waving goodbye to Loris.
Oh, okay. Yeah, don't worry about it. So anyway, now I lost my train of thought. Sorry about that. Well, I'll just jump on. I remember where I was taking that. The other thing is that the comptroller, Glenn Hagar, just came out with the certified revenue estimate, which he does this kind of midstream before the elections, before the end of the year. And that has calculated that the end of this fiscal year, the end of projected 24-25 fiscal year, there still will be an $18.6 billion surplus. If you remember, there was a $33 billion surplus going into the last session. They didn't expect even to have this 18.6. They've been spending a lot of money on things like border walls and their border things and not funding other things. So just have to be mindful that it's good to be going into a session with money in the bank. The rainy day fund is about to reach its cap, and if it reaches its cap, which is about 25 billion, in addition to this 18 billion, then that money has to be spent. So it's a good problem to have, but then again, what the decisions are in terms of how to spend that is what remains to be seen. There are in the third special session right now. The governor has repeatedly called him and said he will continue until he can get school vouchers passed. The rural representation does not support vouchers. So they're in their third session. They're dealing with other issues like not allowing businesses to require COVID vaccines for employees, immigration issues again, school vouchers. There's a number of bills that have been posted around school funding, but unless the governor puts the charges in his directive, which he didn't do for school funding, then they can't be acted upon during the special session. They anticipate special sessions possibly well into the new year and over the holidays. I don't know. That's kind of it for the state. The only other thing in terms of federal, this is again, right now, the federal government is frozen because they don't have a speaker, unless I missed something this morning. I will give a shout out.
They do have a speaker.
Oh, they
We
do
have a speaker
have,
now.
they do have today.
The guy
Oh,
from
right.
Louisiana. Yeah.
Okay, for
It was,
more than
and it was
4 hours.
unanimous. So
Okay, all right. Well, I eat my words there, but what I will say is that applaud to Kay Granger, Representative Kay Granger, who's chair of appropriations, who was only one of 3 Republicans who voted against Jim Jordan. So that was a Texas presentation there. So good, we now have a speaker. So now it's possible to be moving forward on everything, including appropriations, because the appropriations process is underway in terms of things like NEA funding. In terms of federal legislation, just a couple things that I know that you all are interested in at the federal level. One of them is ticketing, and there's legislation which I've been heard is probably likely to fail, but there is still federal legislation around ticketing. Visa policy legislation still happens, and I know that has an impact on you who are presenters in your theaters. Again, appropriations, and then there are a couple other things I know that do impact this, not just Dallas, but largely the major cities, but also others. And then just last but not least, the White House has been more outspoken than most former presidents in terms of the whole government approach to arts funding. So not just the NEA or NEH as an isolated source of funding. And just earlier this week, I think on Monday, held a meeting with senior officials from, I'm going to really quickly go down the list so you can see who they're collaborating with. Health and Human Services, General Services Administration, Homeland Security, FEMA, Bureau of Education and Cultural Affairs, Department of State, Department of Agriculture, Environmental Protection Agency, Indian Affairs, Institute of Museum and Library Services, NEA, NEH, Gender Policy Council, Education, Transportation, AmeriCorps Housing, and then a group of private foundations. So it is a whirlwind of a meeting to try to really look at the NEA funding as it touches all of those other agencies. So it's a hopeful sign to us. If we were able to pull together that group in the state of Texas, that would be a really awesome goal, to try to get such a variety of, in fact, I'm just looking, Department of Defense didn't seem to be present, but certainly they're involved because of the Creative Forces work. So anyway, that's it in a nutshell. And I will keep in touch with you and with Chris, certainly, and we'll make sure that We run anything that we learn by, Martine, she said by October and November. So the window of time for your city council would be the end of November. So before the end of November, we'll come back with recommendations of things that the city council can discuss if it wants to be, endorse them or not. So did that make sense?
Mhm. Lily has a question about, have you gotten any information about the TTIR funding?
Lily, thanks for asking. Right before the last newsletter, I sent out a newsletter on Monday, I think. I contacted TTIR. They're still reviewing all of the proposals. The last round, as you remember, was due on September 15th. Those grants can be up to 250,000 minus anything you might have gotten in that first round. So good question. They said, tell your people we are still reviewing. I'm really anxious to see who got the money and how much money they got. So, and I know all of you are who applied for that as well.
Yeah,
So,
you're right.
And before we let you go, I just wanted to say welcome to Chris, and we look forward to having Chris with us when we resume our regular meetings. That will be in January, but Chris, do you want to say anything to the group here?
I'm just so grateful to have to be here with all of you today, and giant shoes to fill. Even as Anne's just rattling off all of these things that are going on, it's just forefront of mind. Big shoes to fill, but happy to fill them, and really excited about the future of this organization and to be of service to all of you.
We're looking forward to your leadership, Christopher, and it's already
We
been
are.
there, so we already see it, but looking forward to it.
We are,
Cool.
and I would be remiss with both Anne, we remind you all, and Chris on this. But if you have not renewed your membership to Texans for the Arts,
Mhm.
please do that.
Please do
It's
that.
so important.
Oh, I'll do
Exactly.
that first thing when I get off of here, I promise.
All right.
Can we give Anne a round of applause and wish her well?
Thank you. Thank you. Cannot do it without the full village. Really, really appreciate it all. So
We
and I
appreciate
haven't-
you.
I
Thank
haven't
you.
fallen off the planet. Remember that.
Okay,
Well,
thank you.
and Anne, you'll appreciate this next item.
Yes, we just learned today, and it's not been publicly announced yet. We're going to wait for Americans for the Arts to do that. But Omar Narvaez, our very own council member, who has been in our corner from day one when he first got on the council, he will be getting the 2023 Public Leadership Award in the Arts from Americans for the Arts this year.
Yay.
And
We
that's
are
for
so
his
proud of
strong
him and
advocacy.
so happy.
Well,
Yeah.
congratulations. You are good teachers and good learners, all of you.
Well, it's nice because if you recall a few years ago, Mayor Rawlings
Yep.
also
Mhm.
received, and this was from the U.S. Conference of Mayors, I believe,
Yep.
received
was-
an award for his leadership in the arts. So now we have a mayor and now we have a council member
Yeah,
who are being recognized nationally for their leadership in the arts. So we are so fortunate, and I'm sure we'll figure out a way to do a little something for him. We may just take him out for drinks.
I won't toot my own horn, otherwise, that I was awarded the Aileen Volcanis Arts Advocacy Award by
That's
Mayor
right.
Copeland. So you've got
Wow.
three
That's
of them in
right.
Texas.
We
So-
do.
It's true.
And, the
And,
mayor-
and Omar is celebrating his 50th birthday that weekend of the summit.
oh,
Ah.
well, Rollins got his award, I think it was January 2020, because I was in DC for something else and I went to that award. And he did ask me if I worked for the Texas Cultural, he said, do you work for that organization that does the big gala? I was like, no. The arts. But he was great, and we have a good round of photographs with him. So
That's right.
Great.
all
Thank
good.
you all.
Well, that's
Oh.
all we have. Thank you, everybody. Thank you,
Yep.
Ann and Chris.
Yes.
Stay tuned, and please do go look at that survey, and we'll let you know about the bond stuff.
Yep.
All right.
All right.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Till later.
All
Bye.